queen, protect your household, now make them come in. If you now want pop down and fenke, if you burn mosquito and run with dengue. If pain lick your head and your joints and your eye, and you want fever meat and your temperature high, it could be dengue, don't hesitate. See a doctor, don't self-medicate. For some painkiller can make you bleed, and you will try to recover and no succeed. We no want pop down and fenke, if you burn mosquito and run with dengue.
A message from the Ministry of Health.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Inside the OUR, a production of the Office of Utilities Regulation. I am Gordon Brown. A Flow customer said to us, "My last bill was paid in full before the due date, but despite this, my internet and phone service was disconnected. I called Flow customer service and I gave them the details on the payment receipt, yet I was told to wait a few days. They said my bill is overdue. OUR, can you help?" One of OUR's consumer affairs officers advised this Flow customer to immediately email the utility provider to document this concern and give details on this matter, including when payment was made. The customer subsequently said thanks for that advice, as Flow realized that the payment had in fact been made. His internet and phone service was restored. Utility consumers, it is in your best interest to document any complaint you have with your utility provider. Send an email. Do not only call the utilities customer service team. You may also choose to use the utilities website to chat or send a direct message on its social media channels to ensure that there is a record of communication on the issue. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube page and watch our informational videos. I am Gordon Brown. Join us again for another edition.
Welcome back to PBCJ Presents. We're talking to the PSOJ's Theodore Mitchell, and we're breaking down some of the issues within the budget for the 2022-2023 fiscal year in Jamaica. Now, will the planned increase in public sector wages affect the private sector? Do you think, though, that the ministry will have to go back for another review?
Okay, just to note that there's risk to the budget in terms of what is happening externally, plus it is that there's always risk to the budget if you haven't completed fully the negotiations with regards to the unions. Good? To the best of my knowledge, as a large group, the negotiations have been completed with some of the groups. But there are some groups which are still outstanding in terms of the wage issue. So, but the ministry would have built into its budget profile the possibility of whatever increase is expected there. Now, if it is that the increase that is granted or agreed on is beyond what is budgeted, then naturally it would have implication in terms of wages and salaries. But I don't foresee any significant rise, which will cause any major concern as it relates to what is in the budget.
Now, will the consolidation of payroll taxes affect the operation of the private sector? Do you think it's a good or a bad move? It
is a good move from the private sector perspective with regards to efficiency. Now, just think about it, where it is that you have to make payment to several different entities. Good, it take away from the time of whomever is engaged in that activity. So, by virtue of consolidation, it improved efficiency for the private sector entity, and the move is welcome.
Do you believe it will redound in overall rates, though?
I don't see a reduction in overall rates, good, from this, but what it does is that it just simply improves efficiency in terms of the payment of taxes.
The finance minister announced that the import customs duty on the importation of electric vehicles will be reduced from 30% to 10% for an initial 5-year period. Will the private sector support this initiative? Is a 10% tax low enough?
I mean, we always support, as we were discussing previously, reduction in taxes, right? I mean, it would have been good to have no taxes. However, the truth is that we have a country to operate, infrastructure, paying public sector workers, etc. So there's a need for taxes to do that. We do welcome the policy, which would perhaps lead to more EVs. It would perhaps lead to reduction in petrol consumption, which we know have a whole lot of negative for the environment. So from the private sector perspective, we welcome the minister's initiative.
Well, that certainly bodes well. I mean, I'm hearing that there is an entity already looking to partner, two entities, Stewart's Motors, and another entity looking to partner and import electric vehicles, to put more electric vehicles on the market, which will be good for our energy consumption. But some persons are saying that the batteries for these vehicles will cost more than the vehicle themselves. Are you guys looking at that within the private sector, how you can offset some of those costs on the small man?
Electric vehicles do cost a tidy sum, and the batteries are very costly. Good, it's part of the overall cost. As it is that technology evolve, I suppose it is that we'll see a reduction in battery costs, but for now it is that they're elevated, and it's beyond the government or we in the private sector to reduce those costs. It's going to be dependent on what happened outside in terms of the technology and the pricing of the batteries.
But I think the time is right now for us to make the switch and ensure that the public can make this affordable. Fuel prices are rising, skyrocketing in my view. Don't you think? I mean, how do we manage this? Isn't this one way that we can offset some of those costs?
There is a Vision 2030 plan to actually have 30% renewable energy in the mix.
Exactly.
But we are currently at around 16%.
Isn't this the right time now to make the switch, though?
It will take some time. If you may recall, it is costly to do so. In fact, JPS grid is not necessarily configured to receive some of the new energy in terms of wind, solar, etc. You have to configure the grid to allow it to utilize those energy. So that will take some time because it requires investment, etc. As it relates to gas prices, recall it is that we are takeoff prices as it relates to fuel. We import those. Good. There's nothing that we can do. Currently, we see where it is that the price on the spot market is relatively high, but it is that forward prices are also relatively high as well. What this is signaling to us is a possibility of hedging. Good. I think it is that we should look at it, because it is that in the future, notwithstanding what is happening now, it is one of the way of try and relieve or limiting the surprise as it relates to increasing energy costs.
Barbados is capping their per litre price. Do you think that's a way that our budget can go? Should they cap it?
It is a possibility. I won't say they should. And why it is that I say that they should? They shouldn't cap it, just right. You'd have to look at the budget profile and what prices they put into the budget as it relates to gas price and the taxes that they're expected to raise. I think it is that it's about $67. Good, but being that gas price, or rather the price of fuel on the international market is currently $100. It doesn't mean that it's going to remain $100 over the next couple of months. So you have to wait and see somewhat, good, to determine whether or not it is that is done. Because if indeed a cap is placed right now, it could have implication if it is that, say, fuel price, for whatever reason, or oil price should fall significantly. Good, but in the scheme of things, it is welcome, but you have to be careful.
All right, let's talk about digital currency. Will the business community buy into the Jamaica digital currency, which is backed by BOJ, Bank of Jamaica?
The business community wholeheartedly accept the currency, the digital currency as is.
All right, let's look also at the housing industry. One thing coming out of the budget presentation is the fact that they're looking at ensuring that up to 3 persons can join their NHD benefits to acquire real estate, because it's pretty I would say difficult, but it's competitive out there in terms of financing and real estate. Your opinion on that? Is it a good move?
It is a good move. It is welcome. There are groups of individuals who contribute to the NHT and they are not able to access a home because it is that their income does not allow them to. Good in terms of making the payments to NHT. By broadening the amount of individuals who can acquire a home, pooling their resources, it allows persons, especially from the lower end of the income ladder, to now own a home. And recall it is that you're talking about building wealth for future generation, and home ownership is one of the foremost means by which it is that people can use to build their wealth and improve future generation in terms of their wealth capacity.
Now 3 persons can come together, but the price on the market is too high. What can the government do, in your opinion, to ensure that the little man can at least afford to buy a piece of property?
I get what it is that you're saying, Simone, and like you, I feel your pain. The issue at hand is a matter of the availability of land space within the areas where persons want to live. So, for example, you look at the Golden Triangle, an acre of land may be selling there for upwards of $1 million US. So, for individuals, for developers to generate a return, they have to price the unit, at a relatively high rate. I think it is that it's what needs to be done is a discussion regarding the development of inner city communities, etc. In my opinion, there are some areas which you look at how the use of land is not efficient, and it is that you could develop those areas. So the space is there, etc. So the housing trust and the private sector could go in and redevelop those areas. But it is a need there is a need rather for the government to engage in that broader discussion with the general public and with the private sector entity to facilitate that sort of development. And if that is so, then you can have access to land within close proximity of the capital, which perhaps would result in a reduction in housing costs. But that's one methodology. There's other in terms of building costs. Building costs is expensive because of the material which we're using. Good persons want brick and steel construction, and that is pretty pricey. So if it is that we look at alternative construction material, then that could help to reduce the price of housing.
Okay. Any other issues that you would want to raise coming out of this new budget?
Well, we are pleased with what we're seeing on the capital spending side, good, as well as the development as it relates to hydro energy, the proposal for hydro energy, right? That is welcome. As it relates to capital, the infrastructure of the country needs to be developed. It lends itself to increased investment. You look at the roads. Persons spend lengthy time on the road, going to work, etc. It takes away from production. Good. So that is a plus as it relates to the capital spending side. Provided that the hydro energy proposal does come to fruition, I think it is a win-win for the government and for the public in general, and we in the private sector are pleased with the mode of financing that the government is proposing. We're seeing where it is that there's actually a shift from government to government borrowing to one where it is that the government is engaging the private entity, and that is indeed welcomed at this point in time.
So we can say that the PSOJ is overall pleased with where the government is going in terms of its vision and its spending policies.
We are indeed pleased with what we are seeing.
All right, well, there you have it. Theodore Mitchell from the PSOJ, thank you so much for coming to speak with us and breaking down some of the issues and content of the national budget.
Thank you, Simone. Thank you for having me.
All right, you've been watching PBCJ Presents. Thank you so much for watching.
The point of wearing a mask is to prevent the spread of air droplets from persons who may or may not be infected. When wearing a mask, please ensure that the mask goes above the nose and below the chin. This might be a bit uncomfortable, but it's for your own safety. The position of the mask is very important. It should not be worn on your forehead, under your chin, or on your neck. Please do not remove the mask when speaking. This actually causes more droplets to be released into the atmosphere. Trust me, if you have on a mask, we will still hear you. When you're removing a mask, try not to touch the front of the mask. If you do, remember to wash your hands or use hand sanitizer. Please throw away the mask appropriately. Remember, partial protection is better than no protection.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Inside the OUR, a production of the Office of Utilities Regulation. I am Gordon Brown. Today we want to remind you about guaranteed standards put in place for customers of JPS, NWC and small private water providers. What are guaranteed standards? They are performance measures that guide the provision of utility services delivered by these providers to you. If they fail to honor their agreement, affected customers are entitled to compensation, which is applied as credit to bills. Learn more from our website, our.org.jm. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube page and watch our informational videos. I am Gordon Brown. Join us again for another edition.